single life, don't be going that area because you will live with regret. I know a lot of you know that Sue and I, back in 2003, dated a few different times. And after 2 or 3 dates, and after talking a lot, knowing each other, I decided, nope, it wasn't the right time yet. And called her, and we talked for a couple hours, and we said, not the right time. Hung up. She felt like it was still the right time, but she knew God was still going to bring us together. But for both of us, we said, we had done nothing. The reality is we had waited. We did wait until marriage for the consummation of marriage. But we had done nothing during that time, so when I broke up with her at that time, there was no regret because nothing had happened. Why does God say to us, save it till marriage? Because when we don't, there is regret in our life. Next one, keep reading. Verse 14. I would have come to the brink of utter ruin in the midst of the entire assembly. Utter ruin. Living with embarrassment. How many of us really don't know individuals who they have been married and maybe you've been friends with people and then all of a sudden one person has stepped out of the relationship and your friends are gone. There's that embarrassment that you have it as an individual if you've done that. How do you face other people when you say, I walked away from my spouse? I watched this video lots of different times, the video on pornography. Just amazed that man and wife were willing to put it on a video and then put it on what's called sermon spice for pastors to use, for churches, for worship. Hey, he didn't step out physically with another woman, but he was stepping out with pornography, which is just as bad. And there is an embarrassment. Also, what we see is a loss of family and friends, as I just said. If we would look at, we won't read it right now, but Proverbs 6, 27 through 35 talks about the fact, can a person scoop fire into his lap and not be burned? Can a man or a woman walk on hot coals without being burned? So too is the man or the woman who sleeps with another man or a woman's husband or wife. They're scorned. No restitution can pay back. There is a loss of family and friends, but there's one more loss here. One more loss, which, if we looked long enough, we could probably find it within Scripture, but it's a loss of health. A loss of health. STDs. AIDS. All the other sexually transmitted diseases that we have within our life. But the reality is, if you look at a man and a wife who have waited for marriage for themselves together, they don't have these diseases. Do you all see what we lose? God says, I don't want you to do it before marriage. I want you to wait till marriage. I want you in your marriage to keep it to yourself. Well, not to your married partner. And yet we got to take this another step farther. Because I think a lot of you this morning would sit back and say, man, this commandment doesn't pertain to me because I waited till I was married and I've never had this within my marriage. And so I'm off scot-free. But are you? What does Jesus say? The spirit of the law. You have heard it said, do not commit adultery. But Jesus says, I tell you that anyone who looks lustfully at a woman, we could also say here, anybody who looks lustfully at a man has already committed adultery with him or her in their hearts. Okay, a lot of you may say, we've never physically done it. We are scot-free. We are off. Yet the reality is, how many have done this? The reality is Christ opens this up to be much more. Again, it gets into the whole idea of last week that we looked at, you shall not murder. We all say, oh, we've never murdered anybody. And Jesus says, no, if you have said mean things to somebody else, if you have killed their spirit, you have murdered them. If we look lustfully at a man or at a woman, we have committed adultery with them. And if you look at that and you look at the murder one, and the next few weeks that we look out at, we are all guilty. I would dare say there's not a single person sitting in this congregation this morning that could actually say they have never done this. I may be wrong, but human nature, we are born in sin. So then the question is, if we have done this, what are we to do? Then it's the so what question. Well, there's some ideas. Just some ideas that I've learned within my life of some things that I've tried to do, some ideas that I've learned from other people. Wednesday night, the sermon study group at my house, we great talk about this, and I asked them, what are your ideas? You know, how do you try to handle some of these struggles in your life? Proverbs 5:15 says this, drink water from your own cistern, running water from your own well. If you are married, realize that the relationship, that physical relationship, is called to be between yourself and your spouse. And if you are single, that physical relationship is called to wait until you have a spouse and yourself. So there's no regret, no embarrassment, no loss of health, no loss of all those different things. What to do? Drink water. In other words, celebrate your marriage. And I struggled, honestly, the last few weeks because most of you know I do marriage weekends with the Air Force, and so there is so much material. I'd love to keep you all for like 12 hours to go over all this stuff that I go through with Air Force and whatnot. Oh man, I just lost it. It wasn't in my notes. I had it and it's gone. Okay, but drink water from your own cistern. The second one is Job 31:1. Remember the story of Job? He has it all. He is extremely wealthy, rich, got lots of kids, and he loses it all through testing by Satan. But Job, in Job 31:1 says, I made a covenant with my eyes not to look lustfully at a woman. So what are you and I called to do? To make a covenant with ourselves, not to do it. Not to take that second look. Not to be walking down the mall and take another look around at you, because it doesn't do any good if you see the woman or the man walking by. Not to take that second or third or fourth look. What to do? Most of you probably know the story about Joseph. Joseph being sold by his brothers into slavery. He ends up going into Egypt. He ends up being hired by Potiphar. He becomes Potiphar's main steward. Potiphar's wife says, there's a hot Hebrew man I want. Joseph could have gone into it, but he said, no way, Jose, and he ran from Potiphar's wife. Ends up in jail because he is a man of integrity. But he ran from it. Sometimes it means you and I possibly just need to say, we will not be in a certain area. We will not show up. We will avoid that hot spot. We will avoid that red flag area. Billy Graham, awesome man, Billy Graham. Billy Graham, throughout his entire ministry, has had a thing that he will not counsel a lady by himself. He will not. I've got it from my dad. My dad used to, but if you come to my office, there's a window into Kim's office so that she can always see what's going on. Why is that? More for my protection. Because we don't want to be in a place that there could be a possibility. For yourselves to realize, run from it, and then don't show up. Avoid those places that you know you're going to be tempted in. Fifth one is prayer. Be in prayer. This is an interesting one because I've talked with some men, some women, myself included. The fact that if you can feel, as Jesus says, you look at somebody and you sort of like are covetous of who they are, and you want them, and your mind starts playing games, and then you say, I'm going to go to prayer, and you start praying for yourself to have strength, not to have temptation. Well, sometimes that just adds more temptation. What I've learned in talking with some other guys about is not necessarily praying for yourself, but it's praying for the other person. And I say, Lord, bless that person. May they have an awesome marriage. May they worship God. May they